Welcome back to the Us vs. Them YouTube channel. I'm your host Vince, and we're going to be looking at the next three fights for the fight night this weekend, Whittaker versus De Ridder. I'm really excited about these three fights because they're all pick'em fights, but I also feel pretty strongly about who's going to win the next three, so this is big money making opportunities. Those three fights are Bryce Mitchell versus Said Nurmagomedov, Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov, and Almabayev versus Jose Ochoa. Let's get into it. A big factor for this fight for Bryce Mitchell is the fact that this is his first time coming down to the 135-pound weight class. He's obviously spent his whole career at 145, and now that he's dropping down, he's faced a little bit of adversity, some tough losses at 145, and so he's decided for his career, dropping down to 135 is the best option. And typically when I see a fighter do that, it would make me nervous, but seeing Bryce Mitchell do that, and also seeing that he was undersized in a few of his fights against Ilya, against Gene Silva, obviously Josh Emmett, who's a monster. He was obviously undersized in a lot of those fights. So seeing him drop down to the 135-pound weight class, I'm not nearly as nervous about that as I would be for other fighters. When you're assessing a fighter like Bryce Mitchell, I think the first thing that you assess is where his weaknesses are. And when you look at the guys that he's lost to recently, Ilya Topuria, Josh Emmett, Gene Silva, those dudes have big power in their striking. Obviously, Gene Silva, is a super scary puncher. He's going to marauder. He's going to keep walking forward, keep talking shit. That's the type of fighter he is. Josh Emmett, with that huge power that he has, he was able to turn Bryce Mitchell's lights out with that one punch. And Ilya is probably the hardest hitting 145-pounder we've ever seen. So these guys are big power punchers, big hitters. And that's what I look at when I look at Bryce Mitchell. And when I compare that to a guy like Said, I don't see him having that power that Bryce really struggles with. When I look at Bryce's striking, I notice that he tends to cover up really quickly. If the guy's pressuring him, Bryce is not the type of guy to move his feet out of the way or anything like that, or cover his guard. He seems like he almost panics when that happens. And that's a little bit worrisome, but I don't really see that playing a factor too much against Nurmagomedov. The biggest thing for Bryce that he needs to be worried about in the striking is him rushing in. Obviously, we saw that with Josh Emmett when he rushed in and he got clobbered by that huge right hand and put his lights out, started seizing. It was scary to watch. But that rushing in like that and not moving your head at least off the center line or doing something to where the guy can't just throw up a punch and knock you out, that's something that he's going to have to worry about. But I don't see him doing that this fight. I really don't. Bryce Mitchell's strengths are obviously his grappling skills. He likes to get the fights to the ground, use a methodical approach to advance, pass guard, land some damage, and look for submissions. He definitely utilizes his grappling to win fights. We saw that against Dan Ige. Dan Ige put some damage on his eye in round 2, and Bryce Mitchell was able to gut through that and get a nice body lock takedown and secure the takedown and secure the round. He also, against Dan Ige in round 3, got an early takedown and just held top position for 4 minutes at least of the round, and was able to secure round 3. We also saw that he was willing to grapple against Kron Gracie. Obviously, Kron Gracie carries the Gracie name. Very high-level grappler. We saw him even pull guard a few times against Bryce. And Bryce welcomed him pulling guard and actually was able to stay on top, work some ground and pound, and even advance position a few times. Kron was able to put up I can't remember exactly what the submission was, but he was trying to submission from his back, and he actually made a pretty good attempt. But Bryce Mitchell was too savvy for that. He worked through that. And we saw what happened when he kept pulling guard at the end of that one. He had a frog splash him on the ground, and that was it. Said Nurmagomedov is coming into this fight with a 18-4 record. He has a 7-3 UFC record, and he's got losses against guys like Hani Barsalas, Jonathan Martinez, and Vinicius Oliveira, who we just watched last weekend. One of the things I was looking at when I was looking at the Tapology is I saw that he had canceled bouts against guys like Kyler Phillips, Montel Jackson, and Daniel Marcos twice. And this is before Daniel Marcos was fraud checked by Montel Jackson. I just thought that was really interesting to notice that he pulled out against guys like that. These are obviously the toughest, if they would have happened, the toughest guys he's ever fought. And for one reason or the other, the fights never happened. Not sure why. Said's greatest strength is his kicks, for sure. If he's able to stay in kicking range, he'll style on you, he'll make you look silly, and he'll probably even get you out of the fight before the final bell rings. That's just the type of fighter he is. It seems like he's had a lot of opponents who are happy to stay in kicking range, and I'm not really sure why. He also throws a lot of spinning attacks, spinning back kicks, spinning back fists, spinning elbows even. He throws a lot of spinning attacks. But one of the things about Said is you'll notice is his cardio starts to fade as the rounds go on. The spinning attacks become a lot less effective in round 3 when Said's sucking air. He seems a little tired. He is a little tired, and I don't know. There's something about round 3 Said with the spinning attacks that's not nearly as dangerous as round 1. We saw him throw spinning attacks against guys like Jonathan Martinez and Douglas Silva de Andrade, and we saw in both of those fights where he threw spinning attacks in too close of range, and they were able to either secure a body lock or even just take his back from there, which, you know, that's the type of attack that a spinning attack is. If you land it clean, it could knock a guy's lights out, but if you're in too close range like that, it can also make you give up position. Said likes to mix in takedown attempts and grappling to open up more striking. He is definitely not afraid to shoot takedowns or put a guy against the cage and try to work it, you know, some controlled time against the cage. He also has a really nice ninja choke, which is something to keep note of, since that's what put Bryce Mitchell out. But that's when he's already set that up with his striking. He puts guys in trouble, cracks them, makes them take a bad shot, and then he jumps on either a ghillie or a ninja choke. A big X factor, well, there's a couple big X factors for this fight, but one of the big X factors for this fight is Said's cardio. If you watch any of his fights that go the distance, where he's not able to style on people, you get to the second half of round 2 and round 3, and he really starts to fade. He is not nearly as dangerous of a fighter in round 3 as he is in round 1. When I'm looking at this fight with Bryce versus Said Nurmagomedov, I'm looking at a guy in Said. He likes to throw the spinning attacks. He likes to throw those wild, fun to watch type of attacks. He also likes to set up with his wrestling, and he loves to jump on people's necks when he gets a chance. The ghillie and the ninja choke are two of his favorites, and he's really, really good at them. But then you look at a guy like Bryce Mitchell, who has a pretty good chin, despite the fact that he's been had his lights put out. He also has really good grappling skills. He is able to get the fight to the ground when he needs to, and we saw that in his fight against Dan Ige. The path to victory for Said, I think, is if he's able to stay in kicking range and able to kind of style on Bryce and set up to where Bryce will maybe take a bad shot and then he can jump on his neck or something like that. Maybe even wants to put his, knock him out or something. I just don't see Bryce doing that. I don't see him having the fight IQ to say, yeah, let me stay in the range that will be beneficial for you and not for me. Bryce is going to want to get in closer range where he can do more damage and where he can also implement more of his wrestling. And that's exactly what I see Bryce doing. I see Bryce pushing the pace and getting Said against the cage, working takedowns, maintaining top position through a methodical approach, passing guard, and trying to implement some damage before setting up a submission. I see him doing that at least 2 of the rounds. So my official prediction here is Bryce Mitchell by decision. But we also have to keep in mind that this fight is in Abu Dhabi, and sometimes those judges can do some sketchy shit when it comes to their scoring. With Said Nurmagomedov being a hometown guy, if Bryce is going to win by decision, he needs to make it emphatic. The next fight we have is Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov. Nikita Krylov right now is coming in at a -200 favorite, and Guskov is a +154 underdog. I see that line, and I really like that a lot. I definitely think there's a lot of value in Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov is coming into this fight with a 30-10 professional MMA record and an 11-8 UFC record. And he's 33 years old with an 11-8 record. He's got 19 fights in the UFC, and he's fought a lot of the guys that are at the top already. I think that's kind of a crazy stat. He's been in the UFC for a long time, even when he was a young guy, and he's, really cut his teeth in this organization, and I think that's going to help him in this fight. Nikita Krylov has that fan-favorite style, and I think he's one of the most undervalued fighters in the UFC. He comes out always with a super aggressive striking approach, throws a wild exchanges, wild strikes. It's a super fun and wild pace, but I think he does this because he likes to use his striking to set up his grappling. Nikita Krylov's striking is underrated. When I rewatched this fight with Almabayev in round 1, I think he actually outstruck Almabayev. It was a super close round, don't get me wrong, But, Ankalaev felt like he was a bigger threat, but Nikita Krylov was able to stay in a range that he was comfortable in, where he felt like he can do damage and get out of the way before Ankalaev can actually do his damage. I thought it was a really smart approach. He definitely started to fade and lose in rounds 2 and 3, so he lost a clear decision in my eyes. But in my eyes also, I think he definitely won round 1 against the current champ. He also has big KO power. We saw that against Alexander Gustafsson, where he put his lights out in the first round. Now, obviously, that was an old and washed-up Alexander Gustafsson, but with the power that I saw in that fight, it shows that Nikita Krylov has the ability to put some dude's lights out. Nikita Krylov's advantage in this fight is definitely going to be his grappling. We see him throw big, crazy strikes because he loves to set up, use those strikes to set up his takedowns, and they are really effective. He has good control on top, too. We saw that in the Johnny Walker fight, where he was able to get him down and control him pretty much every time he did. And I know what you're going to say, Johnny Walker, blah, 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 blah. But Johnny Walker is not nearly as bad as he gets credit for, and especially in round 1, when those guys are dry and not tired, that's when it's skill on skill at that point. And I saw Nikita Krylov able to get him to the ground and keep him there, and that's always a good sign. One of the things he likes to do in his grappling is he likes to put pressure on guys to where he can get them against the cage, latch up a body lock, and drag guys to the ground. We saw him do that against Ankalaev, and he was able to put pressure on him, get him against the cage, drag him to the ground, and get a takedown. And obviously that's our current champ right now. But Ankalaev was able to pop right back up, so it didn't really matter too much. But if he's able to take down Ankalaev, I can see him definitely taking down Bogdan Guskov this weekend. Bogdan Guskov is coming into this fight with a 3-1 record in the UFC, and his best win is against Ryan Spann. When I look at Bogdan Guskov and I look at his path to victory, and I say path very deliberately, I'm looking at basically his striking. I'm also looking at a guy that tends to keep his hands down and doesn't move his head at all. And I understand that in MMA, people don't really utilize the head movement nearly as much, but you definitely got to keep your hands up if you're not going to move your head. When we saw him fight, make his UFC debut against Volkan Oezdemir, his hands were down a little too much and his head was not moving at all. Would never leave center line. And we also saw what happened later in that fight. Oezdemir was able to score a first-round knockout and put his fucking lights out. I did notice that he was able to keep his hands up a little bit more when he was fighting Ryan Spann, which is definitely a good move because Ryan Spann has a heck of a jab and he can definitely put your lights out. But as the fight went on, his hands started dropping more and more, and his head movement never changed. Bogdan Guskov is definitely at least a power puncher. He's definitely got some power in his hands, and if he's able to connect cleanly against Nikita Krylov, it could be danger for Krylov. But that is basically his only path to victory that I see in my eyes. Guskov's grappling is non-existent. I could tell you that. When he was fighting against Ryan Spann was able to get double under his body lock and drag him to the ground, and he actually finished the round on top. He was able to pass guard even, and Guskov flipped over, and Spann got his back and actually threw in a nice rear naked choke attempt. Guskov was able to get out of it. I don't know if he was able to get out of it or if the round ended. I can't remember exactly, but he wasn't able to finish the fight with it. But Ryan Spann is not known for his grappling skills. We also saw in the Billy Elikana fight, when Billy Elikana was making his UFC debut, that he was able to secure a single leg takedown and get a dunk finish pretty early on in the fight. And again, this is when guys are fresh, they're not tired, they're not sweaty, they're dry. So him going in there and being able to grab Guskov's leg and throw him down like that and finish, and he had probably 4 minutes at least of control time on top. That's not really a good look when you're going into a fight with Nikita Krylov. When you look at the fight between Nikita Krylov and Bogdan Guskov, you're looking at two guys who like to stand in the middle and throw big shots, especially Krylov early in the fight and early in rounds. They both have durable chins, but they both are also susceptible to getting knocked out. We saw Krylov rush in and get clipped and get knocked out by Reyes, and we saw Bogdan Guskov get knocked out by Oezdemir. So they both are still susceptible to getting knocked out. I think the clear difference maker in this fight is Krylov's ability to get the fight to the ground and keep it to the ground. We've seen in the past when Guskov gets on his back, he tends to kind of be a little bit like a turtle where he's not able to get up. And against a guy like Nikita Krylov, that could be very troubling. It could be the beginning of the end for sure. Guskov's path to victory, in my eyes, is pretty small. I think his only path to victory is if you were to catch him cleanly and knock him out. And obviously that can happen. It's a fight. Anything can happen. But I just really don't see this one happening here. My official prediction for this fight is Nikita Krylov by submission. But I can also see the ground and pound KO prop being live. We don't have those odds. I'm filming right now on a Tuesday. And we usually get those odds on Wednesday and sometimes even later. So I'm going to have to look at those odds and take that in consideration when I make my official prediction on Friday. The next fight we're going to be looking at is Almabayev versus Jose Ochoa. Almabayev right now is sitting at a minus 120 favorite, and Jose Ochoa is a minus 106. So this fight is basically a pick'em. Almabayev is coming into this fight 4-1 in the UFC, with his only loss coming to Nurmagomedov, which was his most recent fight. Almabayev's most effective skill, obviously we all know, is his grappling. He has a really, really good ability to secure takedowns and get guys to the ground and work ground and pound. He's really methodical with his ground and pound, so I don't think he has a real high finish rate or finish probability, at least in this fight, but he does definitely enough to stay on top and win rounds. The only fighter that Almabayev wasn't really able to work his takedowns and grappling with was Nurmagomedov. And obviously we know the type of fighter Nurmagomedov is. He's a short fighter with those quick twitch muscle fibers. He's really, really hard to control, really hard to keep down. We saw how hard it was for Nurmagomedov to keep him down in their fight, and I think Nurmagomedov is the best fighter in the world of the flyweight division. Almabayev's grappling is obviously his path to victory, but one thing that his grappling also does is it opens up the striking. A lot of the guys are going to constantly worried about double leg attempts or double unders to a body lock, so they're constantly always waiting to sprawl, waiting to defend. And because of that, typically their guard goes down a little bit, and Almabayev is able to land some big shots too. Almabayev does a good job of not taking a lot of risks in his striking. He understands where the hole in his ground game is, and it definitely lies in his striking. So he takes a more conservative approach on his feet and does a lot of leg kicks or spinning body kicks, things where, yeah, he might get taken down or whatever, but he's totally comfortable being on the mat with pretty much anybody in the world. So he's able to do those types of kicks, and he's able to stay safe while he's doing it. I wasn't able to review a lot of footage on Jose Ochoa, who's 1-1 in the UFC, but I did notice that he had a 2-year period where he didn't have any fights at all. From October of 2021 to September 2023, he didn't have any fights. And I thought that was a long time to go without any fights. Not really sure why, but it's worth noting. I wasn't able to watch the full fight with Jose Ochoa against Cody Durden, but it seems like he does really well at controlling range. He's able to glide in and out, land his strikes, and get out of the way before his opponent even knows what's going on. Especially against a guy not quite as talented in the striking as Cody Durden. He was able to do that and set up a big flying knee KO that happened early in round 2. To be honest with you, very little is known, at least from my perspective, about the grappling of Jose Ochoa. I wasn't able to review a lot of footage on him, and even the footage that I did didn't really show a lot of grappling. So I think the biggest factor in this fight is how effective is he at stopping takedowns. When I'm looking at the fight between Almabayev versus Ochoa, I'm looking at another classic case of a grappler versus striker. The two biggest factors are whether Ochoa can stop the takedowns, and if he's able to stop the takedowns, it's going to look really good for him. Another big factor is while Almabayev is working the takedowns, can his chin hold up from big power punches? Is he able to avoid getting a flying knee KO like Cody Durden, like what happened to Cody Durden? I anticipate this fight to not be super exciting. I think Almabayev is going to work his grappling. I think he is going to be effective at getting the fight to the ground, and I think he's going to be really methodical with his ground and pound. My official prediction on this fight is Almabayev by decision, but I want to see the line for the submission prop here as well, because he is the owner of 6 rear naked chokes, and like I said, he's really crafty with his setup with his rear naked chokes. He lets guys stand up against the cage so he can more easily take their back, drag them back down, and then get the rear naked choke. So I want to look at the line for this, but my official prediction for now is Almabayev by decision. Well, that's it, y'all. Those were my official predictions for the 7th, 8th, and 9th fights for this coming weekend on the card Whittaker versus De Ridder. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this and come back tomorrow so we can put a bow on this motherfucker and finish it with the last 3 fights and bring it home. On Friday, as I already said before, we're going to do release our official parlays for the weekend. I'm going to knock out 2 official parlays that I can see high profit. Well, that's what we're always going for. We're going for high profit, big long odds. That's because that's the type of work that we're trying to do here. The longest odds you're going to find on YouTube and the most realistic. So drop a comment in the below if you agree or disagree with any of the predictions. If you want to add on to any analysis, I'm always welcome to that. But that's it for me, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.